Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm just going to give about 1 minute as others are joining quickly, and then we will begin. Okay, let's get started. Good day, and welcome to the Center of Excellence in Frailty-Informed Care at Pearly Health's webinar series. I am Kimberly Carler-Campbell, a research associate here at Pearly, and it's my pleasure to greet and welcome you to today's presentation. Before we begin, I would like to let you know that any questions or comments you may have, they can be typed into the question and answer area at the bottom of your screen, and our moderator will field them to the presenter at the end. Today we have with us Dr. Virginie Cobigo, who is an associate professor at the University of Ottawa's School of Psychology. Dr. Cobigo leads research to improve the cognitive accessibility of our environment using an inclusive research approach that fosters the meaningful contribution of individuals who experience cognitive accessibility challenges. She has studied in both France and Canada to become a clinical psychologist. Dr. Cobigo is also the founder CEO of Open Collaboration for Cognitive Accessibility, a one-stop shop for cognitive accessibility expertise and resources. Open employs more than 30 individuals with a range of cognitive abilities, including persons living with dementia. This session will be moderated by Munaza Tahir. Munaza is presently the Associate Director of Inclusive Research and Evaluation at Open Collaboration for Cognitive Accessibility, and is also completing the last year of her PhD at the University of Ottawa, where her work focuses on the accessibility of child protection investigations involving parents with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We welcome both Virginie and Munaza to the Center of Excellence in Frailty-Informed Care at Pearly Health's webinar series, and I pass the baton over to Virginie to start to share her presentation with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Hello, everybody. I can't see you, but I hope you all have a good day so far. Thank you for being with us today over lunch. So I would like to share with you some of the work we do at the University of Ottawa and at Open Collaboration for Cognitive Accessibility, which is, as Kimberly said, a not-for-profit organization that I run. And when I say we, it's our big team. We do research and different projects such as training and also some advocacy work to improve the cognitive accessibility of our environment. So I would like to have a chance today to tell you a little bit more about what we do and why we think it's very important. And most importantly, I hope to convince a few of you to join our collaboration for cognitive accessibility, because it's really a teamwork and everybody's experience and expertise is needed at the table. So first of all, I would like to explain what we mean by cognitive accessibility. We all have a range of cognitive abilities, and we can divide those abilities in 6 domains, which are listed on the screen. One of the domains is attention, so being able to pay attention to something, to remain focused on the task, to ignore information that is less relevant. All that is attention. And there are lots of different abilities that are needed for attention. The second category is learning and memory. So it's our abilities to learn new things, to remember things. And these two are obvious cognitive abilities. The third category would be language. Language is also a cognitive ability, both expressive and receptive. So the way we speak, the way we understand other people's language as well, all that is part of our cognitive abilities. There is a fourth category, which is called executive functions. These are the higher level cognitive functions such as problem solving, planning, all those complex cognitive abilities. The fifth category is perceptual motor skills. These are the abilities you need to coordinate your movement with your perception. So whatever your eyes will perceive, your movement will be coordinated according to the information received through your eyes or other senses. And the last one is social cognition, which is often forgotten, but it's a very important domain of our cognitive abilities. And these are abilities such as recognizing the emotions of others or expressing empathy, these kinds of social cognitions and abilities. So as you see, it's a very diverse and broad range of abilities. And for a reason or another, we will all experience at some time some of our cognitive abilities to be altered. For example, when we are very tired, we will feel that our brain is not functioning at its optimal capacity, but it's also the case for some of us who had COVID, and especially long forms of COVID. But sometimes the cognitive difficulties result from longer term conditions or difficulties such as dementia, autism, learning disabilities, attention deficit. It could also be the result of a stroke or a brain trauma that leads to some alteration of our cognitive abilities. For some of us, it's mental health problems that will alter our cognitive abilities, such as depression, for example, burnout. So for various reasons, we will all at some point experience cognitive challenges, cognitive difficulties. Depending on the age group and the definitions that are used, up to 40% of the population is considered encountering cognitive accessibility barriers in their daily lives. So it's a very significant proportion of our population. And yet, cognitive accessibility has received very little attention in research and in policy development in general, and also specific accessibility policy or research. We know more about the physical accessibility of the environment or the sensory accessibility of the environment. I'm not saying we know it all, but we know more. We have more evidence to back up policies and practices. For cognitive accessibility, which means removing the barriers for people to function at their optimal level, regardless of their cognitive abilities. For these actions and policies, we lack evidence, and that's why my team and I we want to tackle that challenge and help build evidence and improve and influence actions and policy development in that area. So again, cognitive accessibility, we don't know everything, but there are 4 types of actions that seem to be summarizing well the actions to remove cognitive accessibility barriers. And to illustrate those 4 types of actions, I would like us to imagine that we are going to a hospital, and I'm sure most of us went to a hospital at least once. When we enter in a hospital, especially if it is the first time or the first time we are looking for a specific service in a hospital, we know there are lots of sounds, lots of lights, lots of smells. It's an environment which is not familiar. And so finding our way, navigating the hospital is already complex, but complexified by the environment, by the fact that we have all those other informations, smells, lights, sounds that we have to treat, to manage, to be able to focus on what we have to do, which is going to a specific office or whatever we have to do. And that can be overwhelming for anybody, but for persons who have cognitive challenges, it can be even worse and really destabilizing. There are things that we could do in hospitals to make the environment easier to navigate for patients in general, but and for patients with cognitive difficulties specifically. For example, there are ways to integrate lighting that would be softer, not as harsh. There are ways of making the environment not as loud. So there are ways we could improve the environment in a hospital. And it's also about how we provide information to people to be able to find their way in a hospital. I don't know about you, but I rarely find my way very easily in a hospital. There are obscure signs that I don't understand, with pictograms that don't mean much to me. And usually when I go to a hospital, I'm in some form of distress or I'm anxious about something, and that of course takes a lot of my cognitive abilities. So perhaps we could work on improving the signs, on making the signs more meaningful, less abstract. Perhaps it's a question of making sure that the colors mean something and we can navigate the hospital that way. Perhaps it's also a question of making sure that the information is where we would look for the information. Sometimes it's too high, it's hidden behind something, but there are ways to make sure that the information is provided where we would look for it. And the second category is about language. Language is critical to cognitive accessibility, making sure that the language is accessible. The language is as simple as possible, so most people would understand what is written or what is said. Again, if we think about going to a hospital, there are lots of complex words that are very obscure for patients. So there would be ways to improve the way we communicate in a hospital to make sure that the language is more accessible. In the signs in the hospital, but also in the way the healthcare professionals interact with people. The third type of actions is slowing down. We need to let people have time to digest the information, process the information, and respond to the information that is provided. And that takes time, and most often more time than we are allowed to use to process information. Especially, again, if we think about the hospital, there are long waiting times, and then everything is rushed, and lots of information is bombarded at us. We have to respond quickly. Questions are asked in a very fast pace, and that is usually painful for patients. So slowing down processes, finding ways of breaking down actions and processes so it is slower and people have time to, again, process and react, is very critical to cognitive accessibility. And we can also use technology to increase cognitive accessibility. Most of us use our smartphones to find our way. We use GPS, we use reminders on our phones or our smartwatch or whatever we have. We already use a lot of technology to support cognition. There are also some technology that are specific to for their assistive function to support cognitive abilities, but mainstream technology also have a huge potential for improving the cognitive accessibility of our environment and supporting our own cognitive abilities. So it's finding ways of using the technology in a way that will decrease cognitive accessibility barriers and not increase them, because I'm sure you have tried some apps or tried to navigate a website or whatever. I'm sure you have examples of times where technology increased your accessibility barriers rather than decreasing your accessibility barriers. So of course, if we want to use technology, the technology has to be helpful and not harmful or an additional barrier. So these are the types of actions that we could implement to improve the cognitive accessibility of our environment. I use the example of a hospital, but it's everywhere in our daily life. And as I said at the beginning, cognitive accessibility is not an area that has been well researched. We don't have much evidence about what would lead to a better cognitive accessibility of our environment. So we need a lot more research to build that evidence. And there is no way we can do research about cognitive accessibility without involving those who face those accessibility barriers in their daily lives. They are really the experts with their lived experiences, because they know the barriers and they often tried solutions or even found solutions to decrease cognitive accessibility barriers. So we really need to build that collaboration and use inclusive research approaches to learn from each other and really build the evidence that will be meaningful and useful. So that's what we try to do in my team, and it is not easy. We are not claiming that we are the best and know how to do it. We're learning with every project. And we learn from our 30 and plus advisors who have lived experiences on each of the projects we have a chance to do together. So I would like today to share perhaps a few of the lessons we have learned in the past years. The first one is, guess what? Accessibility. Cognitive accessibility in research is terrible. We researchers have a lot of jargon. We use very complex words. And so the way we communicate is often not accessible to the people we want to involve in research. So that means that we have to apply best practices in accessibility in general and cognitive accessibility specifically in our research, in our own processes, in our own material. Our recruitment material have to be accessible. People have to understand what we mean. But also the way we ask questions during interviews, the way we interact with individuals, all that has to be carefully thought to be as accessible as possible, which is sometimes complex to do for researchers because we usually have a very short time to complete the project. Our funding is usually too low to really integrate all of the recommendations, but also we are not well equipped, we are not well trained to include accessibility considerations in research. So that is something researchers have to improve for sure in order to make research processes, research materials more accessible. The second lesson, I'm not sure it's a lesson, but anyway, autonomy is very critical and respecting everybody's right to make one's own decision. That is very important when we involve persons with cognitive challenges in research. And one specific point in the process, in the research process, where it is critical to think about the autonomy of persons with cognitive challenges is when we try to seek consent, informed consent. And we have to be reminded as researchers, but also our ethics boards, etc., that consent is a process. It's not a paper we sign. Consent is a relationship with an individual where we answer questions, we address concerns, we explain, and sometimes that piece of the process is rushed, and we unintentionally pressure people to consent or discourage people to consent. So we have, again, to think very carefully about how we approach consent. In my team, we have worked in the past years with the research ethics boards at the University of Ottawa to have consent forms that are in an accessible language, because it's usually written in a legal language, which I don't understand. So, so it makes consent very difficult and not accessible. So there are things like that we can do to try to respect everybody's autonomy. And then we have to think about reciprocity. If we want to involve people from the community in research, if we want them to feel that they belong to the research world, we have to think about what's in there for them. And I'm not using them as a exclusionary mean, but more as us researchers who have who are looking for something. When we build a research project, we know what we're going to gain from it. We're going to gain knowledge that we want to increase. We want to add to our research capacity. So there are things we're going to learn, we're going to gain from the research. But we have to give back. And how do we give back is very critical to build authentic relationships that are key to inclusive research approaches. Because if we want to be inclusive in our research, it means that we have to be very careful about the power imbalance that we can create in a research environment. researchers have the power, they have the knowledge, they are the experts, is the traditional way to build a research project. And so it requires some adaptation to make sure that we build reciprocity within the process and the research project, and we think about ways to give back. And giving back is not necessarily giving back the same knowledge that we are going to receive. It's possible that what we researchers are looking for is not what is meaningful or interesting or helpful for those we want to invite to join the team. For example, in my team, we have completed a few research projects on the cognitive accessibility of technology. And we've learned a lot about the ethics of using technology to increase people's autonomy, the barriers to the accessibility and the usability of technology. We've published papers, we've done our research kind of things. And what our advisors said is that they were happy to be part of the project because they learned how to use specific technology. It gave them something else than just their participation to the research project. And we had underestimated that as a way to give back. We were introducing them to some new technology that they actually, for some of them, enjoyed and then kept in their daily lives. So we have to think again about ways of giving back in a meaningful way. And the last point I wanted to mention is trust. We have to build the relationships so that we trust each other. People from the community have to trust researchers that we're not just going to use them for the data and then don't give back or misrepresent their voices or whatever. But also we have to trust that the people we want to invite on the research team, on the research project, have a meaningful voice and have knowledge that we don't have and that we need to add to the puzzle and complete the or advance the knowledge that we are seeking to advance. So that is very critical, that reciprocity in the trust that we have in each other and building the relationship in that way. I believe that when we make our social contract explicit, it helps build the trust. So we agree on what it is going to change in people's lives to do that piece of research. I think that is very important to express and to make explicit as a contract between the different partners. So we all know to what outcomes we are all trying to contribute. But when we asked our advisors what they thought was critical in the trust they were giving us, they said that it was because it was a paid opportunity. The fact that they were paid for their expertise really meant that we were trusting their judgment, their opinion, and their experiences, and it was valued as an expertise. So perhaps something to consider, the way we compensate for people's expertise and experience is not just a thank you. It's more than that. It has a meaning. It has the value of saying, I trust your expertise, and it is valued in this team. So these are a few of the principles we have learned in the past years. And again, we're learning with every project, and we still make mistakes, and we learn from these mistakes. But it is very important that we discuss how to make research more accessible to everyone, to really build research projects that are inclusive and meaningful to everybody and not just researchers. So that's why I created Open Collaboration for Cognitive Accessibility and its research arm at the University of Ottawa, which is Collaboration for Cognitive Accessibility. And within my team, we welcome and we hire persons from the community with no research training whatsoever for their lived experiences to contribute to our research project. And so it's an invitation for all of you to consider joining us or perhaps contacting us for more information. And I would like to give the last word to one of our advisors, who is Philippe. And I hope you will hear Philippe well.
I think it's to do more for people like us. That's the same with guys, is to do more people that have been experienced like us and people that have problems, is to do more for technology for people like us. You know, because a lot of times they'll develop things, but they don't always consider it safe with people. They don't always consider, you know, our needs. You know, I'd like to be part of trying to give them some ideas on how to develop things, you know, how to do certain things that would be better for people like us that have problems, and how would they make them have more voice commands and more things that are easier to understand, you know.
So Philippe shared a comment after working with us on a project where he said it's very important for him that we would consider the needs of people who have needs like his needs in technology development and in research in general, because more often their needs are forgotten. And so he wants to be part of the solutions that are built. So this is our website, openaccessibility.ca, that you can visit at any time, and our general email address, info@openaccessibility.ca. If you want to write to me directly, you replace info by Virginie, and I can write that down in the chat in a minute, and you will reach me directly. I hope, and I think we do, I hope we have time to have a conversation and for me to answer some of your questions and perhaps learn from your experiences and your desires to contribute to solution development to improve the cognitive accessibility of our environment. So Munaza, I will let you guide me through the questions.
Thank you, Virginie, for that very informative and insightful presentation. I learn more each time I hear you speak about cognitive accessibility and how we can improve our environment to be accessible to everyone. So I hope you can all hear me clearly. We'll take some questions from the audience. I don't see any questions yet in the Q&A box. So please feel free to type in some questions, anything you can think of for Virginie that she can answer for you. That would be great. And she also put her email address in the chat for anyone who would like to chat more and discuss a little bit more about what Open does. Okay, here I have a question from Nicole. Thanks, Nicole. Are you looking for people with special needs to, I'm assuming, to join Open?
So we are looking for everyone who self-identify as being neurodiverse or as someone who encounters cognitive accessibility issues. We are not looking for specific diagnoses, although we ask some of that information because it's easier for us to match people with the projects and contracts, but everybody's welcome. For some of us, again, cognitive accessibility issues are because of depression or because of fatigue, chronic fatigue. So there are so many reasons why our cognitive abilities are limited because of the environment, that we're not looking again for specific needs or diagnoses, but anybody who relates to cognitive accessibility issues. I hope that answered your question, Nicole.
Thank you, Virginie.
Different age group, yes, absolutely. Our current advisors are 9 to 80. We don't involve everybody in all the projects. So the way it works is that we have a sort of bank of advisors, and depending on the projects and contracts, we look at our list and we match people with the projects that come in. We contact them and we say, hey, we have this contract or project. Are you interested? Are you available? And it starts from that. So yes, different age group, absolutely.
So I have a question for Nina. Are there any accessibility guidelines to make technologies accessible to people with cognitive disabilities?
Merci, Mina. Yes, there are accessibility guidelines. There are international guidelines for technology specifically, and I can follow up by email with a list. But still incomplete. As I said, the evidence is still very limited. And apart from technology, we know very little. And cognitive accessibility is more than just technology. It's also about, so for example, I have a student coming from France this summer who's interested in the cognitive accessibility of recreational facilities. When we go to the pool, what are the cognitive accessibility barriers that we face? All these questions are relevant and important to tackle.
Thank
Merci,
you.
Mina.
Those are great points. Sometimes we don't think of where cognitive accessibility might be required. Nicole has another question about time expectations for, I guess, for contracts when people join Open.
Yeah, there is no time expectation in the sense that when we invite you to join a contract or a team, you are told this contract is this amount of hours to be completed in that period of time, and you tell us if you're available or not. Once I was about to say volunteer, but it's not the right word because these are paid opportunities, but once you sign the contract, of course, we want you to be available for the hours that were included in the contract as much as possible. Of course, life sometimes surprise us, but some of our advisors have one contract a year for a few hours, and other want repeated contracts and regular contracts. So it's really up to each of our advisors to decide.
Wonderful. I see Kimberly's hand up. Would you like to ask a question, Kimberly?
Yeah, sure. I had typed it, but I realized as a host, I couldn't actually get into the Q&A. I have a question. You played the video from Philip at the end. And as a researcher, I agree that we should use inclusive and participatory methods. But there are always some challenges with recruitment of special groups. And I wondered, what have you found to be some things that seem to aid recruitment of those with cognitive challenges? Like, for example, I'm always like, what group can I go to where, you know, it's a group of them, so it provides a ready bank of people who are willing maybe to engage? Does such a thing exist? or not, you know, and I'm hopeful that you can provide some guidance there.
Yes, I can, for sure.
Oh,
I wrote a
awesome.
book chapter on
Oh,
that topic that I can share with you. But open is, to me, the solution. The not-for-profit organization we have created and we run has been, in my whole career, the most successful way to engage persons who have a range of cognitive abilities. Recruitment is very difficult, and you have to work with organizations that people trust to help you connect with individuals, because we as researchers have a bad reputation for very good reasons. And so I find it is very helpful to have a partner organization such as CoE to really build those relationships and bridge researchers with the community. The problem is that it creates a gatekeeping scenario where most of the time your contact within the organization will say, I know that Pierre and Julie will be interested and willing, but they don't even ask other people if they would be interested. And Philippe, to me, is a great example. He worked with us on 1 or 2 contracts. And I heard one of his, one of the person in his circle of care saying, I didn't even know he spoke. Because he's very shy. But when we asked him for his opinion, he was very well articulated and had a very strong opinion about things. But he would not have been the kind of guy we would have, they would have approached to join a research team. So that gatekeeping scenario is a bit problematic in terms of the validity, the quality of research, but also the autonomy of people who might want to contribute but are not invited to. Another scenario that I see very often are researchers who create an advisory group. So they have about, I don't know, 10 people they consult with regularly, which is great because you have continuous flow of information and you can build very good relationship with people. The problem is that at some point, I'm pretty sure they all think alike. Like that's what I tell to my students. When you join my team, you have a different way of thinking than when you leave my team. I frame the way you see a few things. So I'm sure it's not different for advisory groups who are always the same. And with Open, what I try to do is to have a group that will be broad enough and diverse enough that their thinking will remain different than mine, and I will still learn from people's experiences. And of course, we want to influence cognitive accessibility at large and not just my own research projects, and that gives that power as well. We have been incorporated for 2 years and a half, I think. And it's growing exponentially. It's a really hard word to say. We are attracting contracts from the public sector, the private sector that I had never thought about before. And it's really great to see how the lived experiences are integrated in a lot of these projects. That was an answer. Sorry, Kimberly.
Oh, that was wonderful. I have just one follow-up question, and then that's it from me. I like that you spoke about the fact that when you do these inclusive methods, that those who are included spoke about the fact that if they're paid, they feel like their contribution is valued. And I agree with that. But I wondered if you have had engagement with, for example, our funding partners, donor agencies, and so on. And what has have they been receptive of this sort of thing? Are they more open now to that sort of thing? Or because I can see that perhaps aiding the recruitment process, which was my original question.
I find that funding organizations are way more open than they were before to paying experts with lived experiences. So that is much better than when I started my career. It's not as hard to justify in grant applications. So yeah, that has improved significantly, I find.
We have another question here. So does Open ask for participants from all jurisdictions? For example, could a provincial government reach out to Open to ask to engage with interested parties from their jurisdiction?
Yes, please do. Our advisors are from Ontario, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, British Columbia, and we are looking at increasing the diversity and including people from across Canada. And we work with, again, the public sector at the provincial, municipal, or federal level, the private industry, other not-for-profit organizations. We are not limited at all in terms of who we work with or collaborate with. And that is thanks to the pandemic. The pandemic also had good outcomes. Open was originally thought as a local business. We had in mind a cafe where people would come in and test some technology or stuff. And we incorporated in April of the first year of the pandemic. And we had to rethink all of our activities. And we became, within a few months, we became completely virtual. And that allows us to work across Canada. We have had contracts in the USA as well. And we could work anywhere in the world except for the language barrier, because most of us only speak French or English, with a few exceptions of speaking another language. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. They're saying they're from
yes.
And intrigued by in reaching out to advisors for the diversity of experiences. Thank you.
Please email me and we can chat for sure.
Any other questions from the audience? We still have some time, I believe, about 10 minutes.
There are a few in the chat I see as well. I have a question.
Oh, yes.
That's Kimberly question, so I addressed that.
Can you talk a little bit about the consent process when recruiting people with cognitive disabilities and some of the considerations to ensure that consent is obtained? In LTC, we want to recruit residents in research, many whom are living with dementia. What advice or recommendations would you suggest to ensure that we are being inclusive, but also abiding by REB requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, talk to your research ethic board to make sure that whatever you do, they will be okay with it. The process that I have built with the University of Ottawa Research Ethic Board is that consent is a process. So we first send the information in an accessible language. So we don't use the typical template in a legal language. We use our own version of it in accessible language. That is all sent in advance to the potential participants or advisors. They have time to read it. They have time to consult people they trust. They have time to ask questions to us so we can clarify things. And that is very important, to allow that processing time again. Then we meet with the people and we go through a quick questionnaire to check if they understood their rights and the risks of the research, if there are any, the benefits, like the critical piece of the consent form. And we ask questions where they would answer by yes or no. If they say yes, then if they respond with the right answer, we assume that they are providing informed consent, free and informed consent. If they misunderstood some of the information, it gives us an opportunity to answer questions, correct misunderstanding, and then re-engage in consent. Or they have time again to go consult somebody else and come back to us, but that opens the conversation. After that, they sign the consent form or give a verbal consent for those who cannot write. And then consent is confirmed every time we interact with the persons. Research is a very abstract setting for most of the people we want to engage in research. So assuming that they provided informed consent when they actually don't know what research means is a bit naive, I find. So sometimes what happens is that they said yes, they signed the form, but when you engage in the research, it was not what they were expecting, and then you have to reaffirm the consent. You have to be open to reopen that conversation, answer questions, address concerns, etc. Sometimes it's about, well, you're asking me a lot of questions. I was not expecting that. What are you going to do with the information? So sometimes it's just re-explaining information that was provided earlier, but they forgot, or it was not meaningful when it was provided earlier. But now that we are asking all these questions, suddenly that piece of information becomes meaningful. And being very receptive to nonverbal cues of discomfort. And again, open the conversation to make sure that the person is still comfortable participating to the research. So that's what I mean by process. It's not a, yes, you signed, great, let's move on. It's throughout the interaction. At each interaction, as a researcher, you have to be mindful and receptive and re-engage the conversation if you feel, if you observe any signs of discomfort. Munaza, am I forgetting anything?
Well, I think that was a great answer. If there's a follow-up question to that, please feel free to type it in the chat. I think that was comprehensive. It's a great point that consent is a continuous and active process. Doesn't end up.
And it's a battle with each research ethics board. At the University of Ottawa, we have a good collaboration, but when we work with other ethics board, sometimes they ask for a proof that the person has the ability to consent, which is against human rights and against best practices in obtaining consent. Sometimes they would ask for somebody else to provide consent. Anyway, there are lots of different requests that comes from research ethics board who are most of the time not well informed and want to overprotect people they consider vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. And at the University of Ottawa, our group of PhD students, we've struggled with that, but the University of Ottawa Ethics Board has improved a little bit, and now we have other students from other universities reaching out to us to say that, oh, they're asking for all of these things, but I can't do this in my consent process. So we've been providing guidance and advice on how to deal with the ethics boards. There's another question here from Kimberly about whether any of our research has looked at barriers to accessibility in public spaces, such as malls, retail stores, banks. They do tend to be quite busy and information heavy and distracting.
Absolutely. We have a few projects on the go regarding banking, virtual banking. So yes, that is part of the things we do. We have not yet looked at malls or public spaces like that. There has been some work done on museums, not by our team, but that I am aware of. Transportation has been done as well by other groups, but we need to do the same in Canada. I forgot where I was going with my idea, but I think I was coming back to the idea of any public space should be reviewed for cognitive accessibility issues, the same way we did with other accessibility issues in the past. So all of that should be evaluated for cognitive accessibility challenges at some point. And that's why we need to grow the team to be able to tackle it all.
And you mentioned that there is a student who will be exploring the cognitive accessibility of recreation activities or swimming pools and those types of spaces.
Yeah. As an exploration, it's a student project. It will be limited in scope, but a first attempt to look at those types of public spaces.
Thank you.
I thank you. I mean, I think that has been such a rich discussion. I must admit, Virginie, when I first heard of cognitive accessibility, I was thinking, what is it? It seemed like such an abstract term. But the way that you presented it allowed us to understand that it is not just those who are functioning on what we perceive to be a lower level, but the fact that everybody needs to have barriers removed to function at their own optimal level. So it technically applies to everybody. So I'd like to thank you for certainly broadening our horizons on how we view things, because this is something that we can apply in all areas. As you say, it's not just hospitals, it's not just malls. You're thinking of all the spaces, banking and recreation and so on. And so it allows us to think more broadly. And now that we know of open, certainly, this has allowed us to understand that we have access to a very useful resource that we didn't know about before. And so certainly even from our end, you will be hearing much more from us as well. So I'd like to thank both you for your wonderfully insightful presentation, and Munaza as well for facilitating a vibrant question and answer segment. I'd like to tell those who are in attendance two more things before you go. We ask that you complete the feedback survey, which will pop up on your screen when exiting this webinar. And also, I would like to invite you to look out for more information on our social media and webpage about our May webinar, which will focus on older adult mentorship. So I thank everyone for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar in May. Thank you, and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yes, good day.
Yeah.